Hey composers, this is Deniz Hughes here to talk about this time around how fast you need to be in order to be a properly working composer. Whether you're composing for games or film or the concert world, um, the speed with which a composer composes varies. Certainly, if you're doing work for film, the turnaround time is super fast, and there are specific reasons for this. And that's what I wanted to talk about, just exactly how fast a composer needs to be in order to make it out there. So basically, whether you realize it or not, music is the very last thing to go on a film project. So the time becomes extremely limited just because it's the last thing. People tend to, the people working on the film project tend to procrastinate and stretch the time, and there are lots of delays. This is all part of human nature, but unfortunately, the crunch happens with composers, especially with composers, and this becomes pretty stressful because well, you got to compose music, and it's not just dealing with lighting or cinematography or editing, but it requires real musical creative skill. And so you have to prepare for it. And in any case, what I want to say about this, and it's pretty shocking for people who don't know this, if you're a working composer, you have to get used to being able to write, at the very least, 10 minutes of music a week. That is at the very, very least. That doesn't mean that that's how it's going to be all the time, and it certainly doesn't mean that you won't have to score more. I've had students in the past who've gone out to LA, and they've told me that they've had to do, on the average, 20 to 25 minutes of music 1 week, a week. This is extremely intense work. It means that there's a lot of preparation that's involved. Your process has to be extremely streamlined. And yes, there is always some kind of an artistic compromise that happens when you have to compose that quickly. Although a lot of composers will say they really enjoy the deadline process of it. I mean, it would be good to be able to sleep a little bit more, but at the very least, the energy that comes with having this tight deadline, this tight turnaround time, does actually help their creative process, because at the very least, it prevents them from putting things off. You're under the gun, and you just got to do it. You just got to get that music out there. So if you can afford it, if you're an established composer, what composers do is that they delegate the work. So they have a team that they pay, hopefully it's not all interns, but where the composer has a whole team of people, ideally a whole team of people who have been consistently working with them, so that it becomes this smooth process where there's minimal communication, where how things unfold is understood. And composing tends to be this private affair where ideally you want to be in your studio alone, but in fact, it becomes a team effort when you're talking about coming up with a great deal of music in a very short period of time. Just to give you an idea, your typical Hollywood film will expect a full-blown orchestral score, from start to finish, recorded, mixed, the whole 9 yards. They will expect that for a feature film, like an hour's worth of music, more than an hour's worth of music in under 6 weeks. In fact, 6 weeks is kind of like a lot. So this is a very different process than what you may have been anticipating when you've wanted to work in film, but this is the sort of animal that you'll be dealing with. The other thing that often happens, once again, amidst established composers, is that they will hire ghost composers. And that becomes a controversial thing because most of the time, a ghost composer will not get any credit for it. They will not be able to list that credit. They certainly won't be making the money that is their due. and you can actually, you wind up signing what's called a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA, so that you can't even say publicly who or what you wrote for. So, but it becomes a vehicle to be able to, for the composer to meet that deadline. So yes, you could be a ghost composer. Another thing, another technique is to cut and paste. And that is where you have music that you've written in the beginning and or towards the beginning of your process, and that you are able to isolate certain elements of it and then mix and match towards the end, so that you kind of, I want to say, slap it together. And it might not sound like that. It might not be such a haphazard process as I'm saying when I say slap it together, but in fact, it's just in a hurry, it's in a rush, and you get it done. The one good thing about the cut and paste idea is that you will have consistency over the whole course of the film. So at least you have the sense of a unifying factor that happens when you use your material. The other thing that I want to say about this composing quickly business is that the old masters, the giant Oscar winners, I will not name names, but you can read my mind, many of them will negotiate as part of the deal of having to write their music, to have not weeks, but months to write their music. And so we all wish them well, but what this means is that if you're up and coming, you never have the same amount of time as somebody who has the power and the household name. And so that becomes, once again, there's like a compromising that happens when you're writing so quickly versus when you have a little bit more time, but maybe you don't have the same amount of energy and verve. I look forward to speaking with you next time about how to compose quickly, but for this time, I'm just giving you a whole bunch of bad news. In any case, thank you for watching, and I look forward to speaking with you soon. Yeah, bye.